I'm Johnny Detroit. He is the man himself, Vegas Runner. We're going to talk Major League Baseball and going into the Major League Playoffs. I'm going to let Ace do a little touting in a minute. I know he's on Twitter right now sending out some free stuff. He has an amazing run in Major League Baseball playoffs over the last couple years, and specifically in the World Series. I also want to let everyone know we have some questions over in the forums. I got some questions in the email. And for those attending right now, make sure you could use the module and submit your questions, as these Vegas Runner webinars always leave tons of questions out because there's just only so much time. And a lot of people wait to the last second to put them in. So my advice is you want to post them now. So VR, you still tweeting or are you ready to go?
Yeah, listen to what I'm going to give to people that are on right now. You don't understand what just came across. You're going to fucking love it. I'm sorry, man. You're going to love
it. Took a minute. You think, hey, real quick, everyone, why are you so excited?
I passed on tonight's NFL game because I'll be honest with you. When I first saw that line, I'm like, you got to like St. Louis. This is ridiculous. Right. You know, and the more I gather information, you know how my process goes. I respect some of the people that like San Fran, so I said I'm passing, okay? And then I know sharp people like the under, but I think that the line's already added the fact that Thursday night games go under, so I don't think there's that much line value. And let's not forget the betting sins against the wise guys, at least the movers I spoke to, they went under 44. They went under 43.5. Then they backed off. Since then, it's been all wannabe wise guys and pros, and then the public has driven this line down to 42. When it hit 42, some mover that I know, he actually went over. So I kind of agree with that later move. I like the over, but I passed on the game. But here's what I'm going to give them right here, right now. I just got the two biggest prop bets this group is betting tonight. And here's what they bet a ton of them. I took pictures and put it on Twitter before. They bet like 20 different props every primetime game, and then do a bunch of live wagering. And unless you have that kind of access and bankroll, it's not worth it to you. But the two biggest ones they did are right here. Actually, there's four of them now. Holy shit. You ready, guys? Colin Kaepernick over 45.5 yards. Most rushing yards, Colin Kaepernick plus 30.5. Most reception yards, Chris Givens plus 15.5. Most receiving yards, Vernon Davis plus 1.5. I'm going to cut and paste those four bets and actually put them on Twitter for you guys. That's tonight's primetime game. And the player to score the first touchdown at 12-1, Tavon Austin from St. Louis. All right, so now you got that for right there on the house. Doesn't get better than that.
Wow. Look at that.
Yeah, they're the biggest plays these guys took. I just passed them along.
Real-time, straight-up access from Vegas Runner. You know what's so funny is I have a Chris account. I got a couple Chris accounts that sometimes I'll monitor, and there's some sharp guys playing in them. And they bet earlier in the week. I was just right off my phone. I just logged in because I don't want to do it on the screen and people see the login. Earlier in the week, they took under in San Francisco. They got Nevada minus 10. They bet Nevada again. They got Tulsa. And they bet their props. They have under 5 sacks, under 5 QB sacks in game San Francisco, St. Louis, under 10 punts in game, under 24 Bradford total pass completions, under 269 Bradford total passing yards, under 75 Gore total yards, under 5.5 Austin total pass receptions, under 49.5 Austin total receiving yards, and under 49.5 Austin total receiving yards. So it's like you just said, is, you know, a lot of people always will see these props and they'll think, oh, those are for squares or suckers. But I will tell you this, these accounts that I look at when I log in to see things and help filter my card, I'm blown away. And even on these TV games, that they are literally putting like fucking $15,000 in action.
Dude, if you could see this account, the amount of money that's in, it's obscene. It's obscene on a prop.
Well, before we get to baseball, if need be, we'll run over a couple of minutes because you guys caught me in VR talking props. But one of the reasons VR is dropping F-bombs, I'm a little excited. One of my close friends, Mexican dude to hang out with, he's actually flying out to Vegas today for his birthday. Kid Rock's going to be in town. And one of our friends is in Kid Rock's band, and he's taking VR to the show and party after with Kid Rock and company. And I've already pre-warned VR that the bass player that I partied with, this dude, he blinks his eyes and just snatch appears, and he's always wasted. I told VR, you've partied before, dude, but you're partying with some Detroit dudes now. So you got to fucking it's not high class Vegas stuff.
I'm gonna make you proud, bro.
You're gonna be slumming it, but you're gonna have a blast. So let's get right to the action. Make sure you get those questions in. So before we get to the Q&A, VR, regular season, playoffs, I'm gonna sit back and listen. Making money in Major League Baseball, how do you do it? What have you done to be so successful in baseball?
Listen, here's what I learned back in Philly. When I started moving steam, I realized that the most profitable sport, believe it or not, was baseball. And here's why. It's every single day. So you could generate a lot of volume. And what I compare it to is blackjack. The reason I was backed off from the casinos with only a 1.5% advantage over the house was because you could get a ton of money in play. If I play one-on-one with a fast dealer, I could play 100 hands an hour. So even if you're just betting $100 a hand, that's $10,000 worth of action every hour. You play 6 hours, you put 60 grand in action at only 100 a hand. Now imagine if you're playing 1,000 a hand instead of 100 a hand. You just put $600,000, over $500,000 in action on a blackjack table in a 6 hours of playing. And even with a 1.5% advantage, and if you put $600,000 in play, do the math. That's why they back you off. And baseball is the same thing for these betting syndicates. There's so much volume. And let's not forget, with a money line, you don't have to hit 50% to turn a profit. You don't have to overcome that hold of that laying 11 to win 10. Now, granted, the money line has its own. If you're not getting a dime line, if you're getting a 20-cent line, it changes as far as the hold. But that's the number one reason I got so into baseball when I first started moving steam. And I was fortunate that I broke in when the kosher kids were betting baseball. And anyone who's ever heard of the kosher kids, they are what Billy Waters was to football and kind of still is. They totally dominated the betting market for almost a decade, to where rumors still, here I am in Vegas 20 years later, and a game will move 30, 40, 50 cents, and someone in the sports book will say that's a kosher play. And little do they know, one of them died about 20 years ago, and they stopped betting altogether. But anyway, so I really got into baseball, and I saw a lot. What I did for the longest time, man, you're going to die, I really was trying to reverse engineer the plays they were making. And what I realized is so much of it was on streaks and series, meaning they took a series and they totally just bet that series game by game by game. And anyone that's been a subscriber of mine will probably notice that a lot of times over a 3-day period, our bets are on the same series, whether it's the same side or the other side of the same matchup, or the total for 3 days in a row in that same matchup, because that's what I got accustomed to doing. Instead of going and handicapping the entire board and all the pitchers and the relief pitchers and guys that are getting rest, and you know how baseball is with these guys playing every day. Instead, what I did is I would zero in on series. I'd pick 2 or 3 series. So all I had to do is break down 3-4 matchups every day, and I'd follow that series throughout the whole 3 days. This is a secret I've never even passed along, and I just did it right now. I can't believe it. I don't even know why, but I thank you guys for joining. So that's why. If you want to make your life simple in baseball, do that next season. It's too late now, but pick 2 or 3 series and just say, I'm going to handicap these series, and here's why. The ebb and flow in baseball is more important than any other sport. Momentum is more important in baseball than any other sport because they play every single day. And that's why there's streaks. That's why there's 11, 12, 15-game win streaks. There's a reason how many NFL teams have gone 16-0 in the last 10 years? The New England Patriots. How many are going in the next 10 years? But there's a reason in baseball you get those 10, 12-game streaks winning streaks and losing streaks because it's every single day. So that's one of the reasons I've had a lot of success this year. And let's face it, I'm not counting myself, but I've destroyed baseball. The fact I've lost the last 2 days and am still 65% over the last 40 plays is a testament to the hard work. And without not just that, what I've learned from it, let's face it, if books had their way, JD, and we'll move on from this topic, but everyone listening, if books had their way, they would not book baseball. I actually just did a radio show on Reno that'll be up. Check my Twitter. The guy will put it up on podcast. And I actually said this exact thing because he brought up the question about baseball. And I said, if even today, if books had their way, they would not book baseball because it is the least profitable sport for the sports book. Instead, they keep it as a courtesy simply to keep clientele and not lose them for when football comes. Because back in Philly, before offshore books, before you could get a bet down so easily, most books shut down after the NBA Finals and didn't open up again until the NFL preseason. Reason? Wise guys destroy it. And it's no secret. I check my ego at the door, and I have amassed over the last 20-plus years some of the strongest sources as far as sharp bettors, wise guys, and movers that anyone could that's in my position. And I get their plays every single day. I could run down right now. The ones I put out on the Twitter, they're syndicate plays. They're not my plays. They're Toronto, under in the Baltimore-Toronto game, and over 4 to KC team total. They're not my plays. They're syndicate plays. Since I'm not doing any premiums until the playoffs, I'm just giving them away. But probably if I was doing premium plays in a handicapping baseball still, but I'm already looking ahead to the playoffs, I'd probably have confirmed one of those plays, most likely the Toronto and the over in the KC team total. So that's why I've had success in baseball, and I think anyone could have success in baseball if they just – the math guys, God bless them, the sabermetrics guys, and they do have an advantage, a small one, but they do have an advantage, and if they're able to get enough money in play, it's worth it to them. But believe me, the guys that really beat baseball, because I saw it with my own eyes and I see it with my own eyes, are the betting syndicates that aren't really just using math and are instead really understanding the ebb and flow of how this game goes and are taking advantage of it. And you're seeing it. And by the way, they bet these series and every single game in a series, whether they're betting it under, whether they're betting it over, whether they're taking one side over the other. So come on, keep firing. Let's do it.
Real quick, because I had some people ask me on some of your future bets. How did your early series and future bets go? I mean, I really didn't have any per se. I took the Tigers like a homer. I had a bet at the Hilton. I think it's like $800 for them to win the World Series. I can't remember the odds. I did a video when I was in Vegas, and I said that the New York Yankees had no shot of making the playoffs or winning their division. In regards to your stuff, how are your futures looking? Because I know since you've been at Pregame, there's been a lot of sports where you've kind of pulled a rabbit out of your ass and called a couple teams you felt could win it all. And it seems
I picked the World Series winner 3 of the last. I mean, I picked the Super Bowl winner 3 of the last 5 years. Come on, and this is going to be 4 of the last 6 because the Saints are bringing it home this season.
Hey, once again, I can't pull it up because I don't want people logging in my account. But when I did one of the webinars with you and you said that, I logged into one of my accounts and I bet a dime on them at 22-1. So in the event that they either make it to the big game, I'm not going to lie, I'm going to be a pussy and I'm going to hedge off a little bit for 22,000. But in the event that they go, no matter what, where they win or lose, because I'm not going to lie, I'm going to hedge out of it. But I'm going to owe you a nice dinner. We'll have to go to the Andiamos at the D. So,
I did not in baseball. I usually do a podcast with Gil and to give a future, and I didn't do it. And this year, I don't even have a World Series winner. So I'm not even going to lie and act like I have somebody. And I don't. I played some season win totals over and under, and that was about it. I'm gonna though once these playoffs are starting, they put a price up. Obviously, I'm gonna look to pick a team to win it all because I didn't during the regular season. And I'll follow me on Twitter at Vegas Runner, and you're gonna get that. But I don't have a World Series winner right now as far as a future bet. But I did talk about it a lot, and I liked your Detroit Tigers. I really did. I thought come October, if they have home field, which, now Boston has 96 wins. But I do think they would have had the strongest home field advantage. And I thought they would have been able to get past anyone in the American League. It's not going to be as simple now, but we'll see what odds they put up. Let's see what prices they put up, fellas.
All right, we're going to get to some of the questions, and like I said, using the pop-up module, you could also email me direct at Johnny at Pregame. I'm sure VR is looking at his computer. You could ask him on Twitter. At VR, you might even want to tweet out if you can't make the webinar and they have a question about baseball or the playoffs or whatever. They could send you a tweet, and once I archive the video, they could hear their question answered. So this one, and they didn't include their pregame username and email, so I'm going to try my best to give everyone their props for some great questions. This one came in early this morning. Is there any value in the team to score first props?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I love it. This person has to follow me on Twitter. If you remember in the beginning of the season, I was cutting and pasting a ton of bets that were all first inning runs. And then I found out another way to take advantage of first inning runs. And here's what you have to do. And this actually getting access to this one betting syndicate that I never was able to get into. There's this group, and what they do is they bet props, and they are so good at betting props. And they don't do it for the entire season. They do it early in the season. They may do it as long as they feel like they have an advantage. And this year they went long. They went past the All-Star break. And what they do is just baseball props. And because of following them, I learned so much. And if you remember the last webinar we did, I talked about attacking games differently if the line moves on you. Meaning, if I like a baseball game over and it gets steamed, and all of a sudden it's off that key 7 and it's up to 7.5. The way to diversify and actually help with variance long term is maybe not put my whole bet on that over if I don't have the best of the number anymore, but instead go in and look at both team totals. Maybe bet those over. Maybe bet over run hits and errors. If you remember, we talked about that. Maybe bet over in the first inning or a run scored in the first inning. So getting back to his question, I do think that there's value in betting yes or no in first innings. But here's what you have to do. You have to correlate it with the game. And what I mean is this. What I learned by monitoring their accounts, and remember, I check my ego at the door, and everyone listening to this webinar, if you want to have success in this business, do the same thing. We're all ego-driven. As human beings, we're all ego-driven, let's face it. And we all in this industry, whether you're a professional or whether you're a recreational bettor, we all are confident motherfuckers. I mean, we are. You can't be successful if you're not confident. I mean, if I don't think I'm great, I wouldn't be as good as what I do. If I didn't, like they say, I look to dominate life. I'm good at it. If you're good at it, you got to have that confidence. And all sports bettors that are successful have it. But at the same time, if you really want to be successful, man, surround yourself with smart people. Get sources of information that are proven to you to be sharp, and use these sources. Don't make it harder on yourself than it needs to be. Don't be that guy that has to come out with the idea himself, that has to get all the all the accolades. That shit don't mean anything. Trust me when I tell you. At the end of the day, it's about making money. That's why we do this. And whoever says money don't buy happiness doesn't know how to fucking spend it, because it does buy happiness. Let me tell you. And at the end of the day, that's what we're all here trying to do. So what I'm telling you is learn from people. So line up sources, like whether it's Twitter feeds you follow, whether it's guys in the pregame forum you follow, whether it's whoever, local newspaper people you follow. But organize your sources and use them. And here's what I learned about first inning props. I'm not getting off track. You have to correlate it with the game. That's how you take advantage. This group that I was able to monitor, that is the sharpest at props, they never bet no first inning run if they bet the over for the game. They never bet yes on a first inning run if they bet under for the game. Instead, if they thought the game's going to go over, then there's a higher probability there will be a run scored in the first, and they would bet the yes. If it was a big steam play on the over, not only did they bet the yes first inning run, but they bet the yes. The over first inning. It's always 1.5 or 3.5 run hits and errors. They'd bet that prop, so they'd go yes first inning run and over first inning run hits and errors. And to me, it was I realized by monitoring their account and getting their plays that everything was correlated. If they loved the game under, they'd blast that no first inning run. More probability says if it's going to stay under 7 runs, you're probably not going to get a run in the first inning, And if it's going to go over 9 runs, you're probably going to need a run in the first inning to get there. So correlate your first inning bets. Otherwise, you're just flipping a coin. And if you're flipping a coin, you better be getting plus money, or at least even money. And if you're going to be laying big, which a lot of these are, then make sure you correlate it with the game. Go ahead, fire.
Next one. VR, I'm interested in your picks to win the AL, NL, and who's your pick to win the World Series and any possible value on any of the teams who are making the playoffs.
All right, see, until it's completely set up, I'd just be reaching, and I don't like the reach, because 2 weeks from, after the weekend when I put it out on Twitter, someone's going to call me out like they have on a video before, because we do videos on Tuesdays, and they say, I thought you liked this game, or when I do a podcast with Gil, and I thought you liked this side, and then Monday Night Football, you gave out a premium on the other side. Things change, I get a lot of information, lines change, and because of that, I don't want to steer anyone wrong, but I still do believe that the best team in the American League are the Detroit Tigers, and I still believe that the best team in the National League is the St. Louis Cardinals. So right now, I don't know how they're going to set up or the prices, what they're going to give me once it's everything's finalized. But right now, I think those are the 2 best teams in baseball, and probably most people that are listening agree with me. So I'm not telling you anything you don't fucking already know.
Next one. Besides starting pitchers, the funny thing is RJ, I have a strong feeling that he doesn't listen to the webinars. He's just happy that we put him in, and I'm working at 7 o'clock my time instead of being at the bar getting wasted. I'm pretty sure he doesn't listen to these because I don't think I've ever heard F-bombs on the pregame.tv videos, which I'm sure he watches. So to me, this is kind of like underground shit. and I'm pretty sure our friends at ESPN...
Like these guys are hanging... Listen, these men and women, right? Women that are listening, no disrespect. I love yous. I adore yous. But yous are the most beautiful thing ever put on this planet. All us men...
Quit trying to get laid, man. Just shut up.
We bow down to you women. So they know I say out of respect. I'm just talking here. I'm just talking with the fellas. It's no disrespect at all. You know me. Go ahead.
All right, Gettleberg. Next question. Besides starting pitchers, what is your most important factor when handicapping a postseason game or a Major League Baseball regular season game? And real quick, I'm going to add a question to a question. Is there a difference in what you're going to answer in the postseason versus regular season, or do you do everything the same?
The postseason's a different animal. It totally is, man. And here's why. When it comes to the postseason, motivation is there. The thing during the regular season, how you're able to take advantage of a lot of like I said, the ebb and flow of baseball is that, let's face it, these guys play so much, they're not going to be motivated every single game. They're not going to bring their A game. And that's why most professional bettors, most wise guys, aren't willing to lay minus 220s because I'm not going to lay that kind of price on a team that I know isn't going to be – I can't at least guarantee they're going to be that motivated. In the playoffs, you could lay 180s. I've done it. I've laid 200 in the playoffs, but I was pretty damn sure they're going to bring it. And so it's a completely different animal. And I think you have to go a little past starting pitching when it comes to the playoffs. And with the regular season, I think starting pitching actually is, and this is going to sound crazy, I think it's even more important because everyone's not bringing their A game. When you have your defense playing motivated ball, you could get away with not as efficient pitching. You know, when you have your offense totally motivated, you're not as reliant on your pitching as you are. And I think you're more dependent on it in the regular season, believe it or not, than in the postseason. So I think a good segment to what the question was, I think you kind of take advantage of it a little bit by not overvaluing starting pitching and instead really looking at the entire team, where during the regular season, so much of it is starting pitching related. So I'm telling you now, look at the rest of the team, the other 8 guys that are going to be on the field. I think that's key. I think being able to determine home field advantage, because it's so much more important in the playoffs. Let's face it, these referees, umpires in every sport, there's the more or less the opportunity to get swayed. And I never see them get as swayed as they do in postseason, you know. And you got to remember, these umps are used to going through an entire season and going in the stadiums like Miami where there's 4,000 people, and they could care less. If they call a ball that bounces to the plate a strike, what 4 people may notice and boo, no one gives a shit. But during the playoffs, you have 70,000. You got to remember, these are like the football stadiums. You know, it's like the NBA where it's 18,000 people. You're talking about 70, 80,000 people. And you see that home field advantage is a lot more important. You got to really value it higher. So for me, that the answer to this question is value starting pitching a little bit less and start looking at the other factors and weigh them a little more. Everything you do to handicap a baseball game, because we all do it differently. Some of us love to look at relief pitching and whether they're rested, and look at the offense and look at home field advantage and look at the park factor. Is this an over park and under park? And look at the umpires. Are they over umpires, under umpires, small strike zone, large strike zone? So what I'm trying to say is add more weight to all those factors and put less weight on your starting pitching. How's that?
I think it's good. This question, I'm going to cheat because I can do what I want because it's my webinar, is this one popped up, and it was when you were talking to Tigers, and I kind of want to hear your thoughts on this. Is, you know, I'm clearly a Detroit Tigers homer, Lions, sadly enough, also. You know, I got my season tickets. I took Gil to the World Series and froze my balls off. It was so damn cold, I actually was about to leave him there by himself. It was so cold.
I remember.
Yeah, it was a good time. Thoughts on the Detroit bullpen and how that's going to affect them in the playoffs? My thought is regular season, like you said, is they're playing every day, and you got to rotate a lot of guys in and out. If they could focus on the better relievers of a shitty relieving staff. I read some stat where they took like all the teams in baseball and they ranked the playoff teams, and their bullpen's like the worst. But my thought process is you're not going to use the Phil Cokes. Some of those stats are skewed when they tried, you know, bringing back Valverde and the big potato got smoked. Is you're going to put a Smiley or another guy in consistently, and in the bigger games, they're going to tell Verlander or someone else to get their ass off that bench and put him in. A la, like, I remember one of my favorite runs was when the Seattle Mariners brought Randy Johnson out in relief, you know, when they needed to win a game. So my thought is, in a best of 7, we get to put our best pitchers in, only have to use the better relievers, and in a real extreme circumstance, throw in a starting pitcher if needed. I'm not as concerned in the playoffs with the bullpen as I was or is during the regular season. VR, what's your thoughts?
Yeah, dude, listen, you know the Detroit Tiger team better than I do. I mean, let's just face it. But I agree with your reasoning. And right now, if you look at Detroit, they're number 1 in quality starts, okay? So as important as bullpen is, you're talking about a Tigers team which is number 1 in all of Major League Baseball, not in the AL, in all of Major League Baseball in quality starts. So here's a team that is a little less dependent because of that on their bullpen. And for me, what I'm going to look for going into the playoffs is the couple days leading up to the first game. I love to watch those shows on MLB Network and on ESPN and on Fox, and I love listening to sports radio. And the reason I listen to it may be a little bit different than most, and believe me, I like the entertainment value, and you do pick up some good bits of information, and there's some good stuff out there. But I love to take advantage of what they are really like over talking. You know, I mean, kind of like a perfect example leading into last week's Browns game. The reason I used the Browns, the reason Browns were a premium pick, the reason I used the Browns on my super contest pick was because all week, no matter what show I watched, what radio I listened to, or who I spoke to, what sportsbook I was in, all I kept hearing about the topic was how this is the worst trade for the Browns and how the owners and the coach are quitting on the players. And to me, I'm like, this is a perfect storm for a cover, not because the stuff is fixed, but simply because the market overreacts, which means that there's line value. And then I'm going to get an effort from a Browns team that's had to have heard it all week as well. And you don't think they're like giving everyone the finger and walking in with a chip on their shoulder to prove you wrong? So for me, that was the perfect storm for a cover because of that. So leading into these baseball playoffs, I want to hear what the bad stuff they're talking about and take advantage of that, and what the good stuff they're talking about and taking advantage of that. What I mean is, if they're overemphasizing how great a team's starting pitching is and how you can't score on them, I'm going to look to bet the over in that series, rest assured, because this is the one time of the year that public money really outweighs wise guy money in baseball. It happens the first month, because in April people are excited and March Madness just finished and there's just NBA and it's not playoffs yet. So people are excited about the start of baseball, and then it kind of dies out and it's all wise guy money and books are just getting slapped around. But now we're getting back to where public money outweighs wise guy money. And remember, two things move lines: money and respect. And the public don't get much respect, but they got a hell of a lot of money, and they bet it, and that forces a lot of line moves. Yeah, and because of that, you could take advantage of it. And that's why when it gets to playoff baseball, and I tell all my clients, I increase bet size. Yeah. Meaning it's still going to be a 2-star and a 3-star, but rest assured my 2-star bet is more than it was during the regular season. My 3-star bet for me, the wager size, is much more than it was in the regular season. I compare my sports betting to what I learned the most when I was playing advantage play blackjack, and that is, the bigger the advantage, the more money I need on the table. In the short term, it's random and anything could happen. I could have a 20 and they could pull a 5-card 21 on me, even though the deck is rich in tens and they're showing a stiff. They could pull it out. It happens. But I know I still want to have the most money I can out on the table at the time my advantage is greatest. Long term, I'm going to profit that way. And right now with the playoffs starting, my advantage has never been greater. And not to pat myself on the back and tout, but there's a reason over the last 6 years at pregame, I'm 31-9 in the World Series. That's 78%. It's not 1 year. It's not 2 years. It's not 3 years. It's 6 fucking years. There's a reason for that.
What you said there, Captain, you just like bombs. You like dropping bombs. You like the F-bomb.
I'm all over. I just want to steam it. I just want to bomb it. I just want to kill it, destroy
and max
it,
shit out.
Own it. Own it. Own it.
It's the other thing is exactly what you just said is come playoff time, some bullshit college football game at 10 o'clock at night, like you said, it's going to be the respect, because very rarely you're going to have enough public money. It's going to make them really want to go against the wise guys. They're going to respect the wise guy numbers a little sharper. But Game 6 of the World Series, they're not going to drastically move a side or a total solely because of the sharps, because of the amount of public money. It's just even like with the Super Bowl, is at that point, those big TV playoff type games, the books have to factor in more. Not saying they don't do somewhat, but the wise guys have, I would say, less influence come the playoffs because the number's a little sharper and there's so much public money that the books have to kind of factor that in. And to me, sometimes there's going to be value in that. And I have no idea who this is. Hello? Yes. Yes. Is there any way I could call you back? I'm doing a live online interview right now. Okay. No, she's not. She's actually at the hospital right now. Okay, thanks.
Can you guys believe this?
Hey, you
This
know,
not
my
even a
wife's
place.
old man's in the hospital getting emergency
Oh,
surgery.
okay, that's okay. That's what I was
Yeah,
going to say.
exactly. Usually when you hear
It didn't even sound like it's a play coming in. I could. That's
you know what? If I was
don't even
another site owner,
don't even explain.
or
Don't
one of
even
these other
explain.
sites, I'd be like, "Oh, I got the steam. Billy Walters is calling me direct." Nope, my 3 kids are upstairs. The old
Right?
lady's
Yeah,
in the
you'd
hospital.
be lying. Hold on. Oh shit, he wants 50 dimes on it.
Yeah,
well, you're
50,
really talking to nobody.
I could have been sitting there talking to a fucking dial tone, trying to impress everybody. Go, really? 50 dimes? All right, this is Johnny Detroit. I got you. No, it was a family member calling, and you know what? Pregame's gonna have to suck it when those calls come in right now. We got some family shit going on. So we're going to the next question. This is from Scott calling. Question for you, JD and VR. He put John in there, but I'm gonna say JD because if VR gets a nickname on this question, I want JD. Question for you, JD and VR. We know that Detroit is going to the World Series. Let's not get too cocky. That comes from me. But who do you guys think is going to go from the NL? Scott, I don't know if you were there earlier. VR's thought process is he thinks St. Louis is the best team, but best team does not always equate to going to the World Series, VR. So even though they're the best team, what roadblocks would you say would make them not be the team from the going to the NL?
No, here's why I like them, because they could win on the road. The other team that I like is the Dodgers, because they could win on the road. I'm not high on the Braves because they're 1 game below 500 on the road. I mean, and you got to be able to win on the road in the playoffs. We've seen that. I mean, you can't keep hoping for a Game 7 at home. So for me, that's why I look for teams that have showed me during the regular season they could win on the road. Because it's even harder to do so in the playoffs. If you can't win without pressure, that's kind of why I wanted Texas to get in, because Texas is the best road team in the whole AL. And because they would have to just sneak in and they have all that experience, I think there would be so much value on placing a future on them, because they would have to get in. They would have needed momentum down the stretch. And unfortunately, they didn't get there. It don't look like they're getting there. But for me, that's why I like St. Louis. That's why I like the LA Dodgers. That's why I'm not high on Pittsburgh. That's why I'm not high on Atlanta, because those teams showed me during the regular season they're only dominant when they're at home. And unfortunately, you're not going to be able to close out every series at home. Someone's going to beat you at home, and you're going to have to be able to get it done on the road.
Next one, and this one, Scott, also. I'm going to let you get 2, and Scott, this one's a fresh question. It's for tonight's football. What's the best play in tonight's college football, the side or the total?
In the college football?
Yes.
I like Georgia Tech, man. I like Georgia Tech. I mean, I know everybody likes Va Tech, but I like G Tech. I do. And everyone likes over. I like the under. I think they're just going to shut down Virginia Tech completely. I mean, that's what I like. In the second game, I went over, and right now I just got a text that a big betting syndicate that I don't actually have access to, but these movers all talk, is steaming this under. So that's why it was 56, and it's probably going to go off at 53.5 or something. I'm actually, you'll hear my coffee going off in the background, so I'm not even near a screen or anything. But I just did check my text, and that's what it said. They're steaming the under in that Tulsa game. But I know for officially that the groups that I do have access to, they like the over. They steamed it over, and they're the ones that pushed it up to 56. But like I always say, these guys don't all work together. They don't. I mean, none of them more or less do. So even though they could share information, they don't all have the same power ratings. They don't all agree on it. One group may like St. Louis tonight at +3.5. They like the Rams. But another group may be laying 3 on San Fran all day. And that the group that likes St. Louis is sitting by the counter hoping every time it goes to a 3.5, we're going to grab it. And you got wise guys disagreeing. And that's what's going on in that Tulsa-Iowa State game. You have betting syndicates disagreeing on what the total. Some like it over, some like it under. I agree with the first group that bet it over. But this second group has been doing pretty good, and they went under. So I'm not as confident as I was probably 15 minutes ago. But with that said, in the first game, the big game, I like Georgia Tech, and I like the under.
And what you just said is something I don't think I could say enough, and I'll repeat it every webinar when something like this is asked or wise guy stuff's brought up. As people who don't really understand it think like they're all in some bat cave and using the bat phone together, and they're all in agreement. And it's not true. I've seen or had access to accounts, and they've been on totally opposite sides. I remember there was a run where if anyone who's watched those wise guy videos with Chris and Frank, there was times during the football season where Chris and Frank, they'd have access to plays, and they were on opposite sides of what Billy's guys were doing.
Yeah, listen, this Saturday, this Sunday, perfect example. Everyone, I mean, now you guys are going to know too, but the movers out here know Billy's on the Jets. Billy bought every 5 on the Jets. He bought every 4.5, and today he wants every 4 too. So now the line's going to be 3.5 everywhere in the world probably, except the places that don't allow his movers to bet into them. They're still going to have 4. Now, rest assured, that word's going to get out. I'm telling you guys it Thursday. Okay, I knew this Tuesday, but webinars today. So I'm telling you today that Billy's on the Jets. That's why it's going to go down to 3.5 everywhere. Now, by Saturday, rest assured, it's going to be spread everywhere that Billy's on the Jets. And there's going to be some 3s out there. And once it gets to 3, rest assured there's going to be another betting syndicate that says, I love the fucking other side. You know what I mean? Like, I know Billy's on the Jets, but he's on the Jets at +4.5, +5, +4, and at 3, I like the favorite. It doesn't make either guy wrong. There's value in both numbers. But what a lot of the steam chasers forget is there's a reason Billy stopped buying it after 4. You know what I mean? There's no more value there. Right. Or believe me, he'd be buying the 3.5 too, because that's what they do. They bet it until the value's gone.
I remember there was a stretch, I want to say 2 years ago, where I know for a fact Billy, Spiro, and a couple other people, they were all over Idaho, like every week. And some other guys that I knew, smaller groups, they didn't move the numbers like they did. They were a much smaller outfit. They're, focusing on head counts and locals and, banging like nickel bets and $200-$300 bets and just getting, 50, 60, 70 accounts and trying to stay under the radar, as they'd always say, they don't want to make any noise and move the numbers. Is, one time they're like, dude, why every fucking week Spiro and these clowns keep taking Idaho, and every single week they're losing by 40 fucking points. So we'll move on, but that's just one of the things. When you hear so-and-so's on here, it doesn't always mean it's set in gold. And the public wins sometimes. Sharp guys disagree many times. Certain people have different power rating systems. Some people put certain value on things that other ones don't as much, that could conflict on what the numbers are going to be. So just don't always assume because you hear so-and-so's on it that it's a lock play.
No, of course not.
Be responsible.
Exactly.
This question comes from Razor's Edge over in the forums.
My man. He sends some good stuff, man. He emails me some good stuff. I don't know if I was even supposed to say that, but he got some good information.
I got a little too uncomfortable for me with the man love there. I like to use it in spots with the NBA playoffs. He's talking about the zigzag theory. My thinking is it would be set up something differently in Major League Baseball to do the starting pitcher, whereas in hoops you don't have to worry about that. What are some tips or advice you may have for applying the zigzag theory in the Major League Baseball playoff series? VR?
I'll tell you what. I instead of the zigzag, I like teams to, if they win game 1 at home, I like them to win game 2 at home. If they lose game 1 at home, I like them to win game 2 at home. I think the home team in game 2 is usually the way to go. That's one of those trends that I think does very well in the Major League Baseball playoffs.
Real quick, we got 15 minutes left, VR. Before I get to any other questions, and I want to get on to your Major League Baseball playoff package and give everyone a special for that, is...
You're going to discount it, bro, with my record? All right, go ahead. I'm just kidding. Go ahead.
Make sure you're going to Kid Rock because I introduced you to my boy. And the funny thing is you never really got... It's funny that he told me you guys text back and forth all the time, and he says how much money you've been making him, texting him shit. He's been playing with a local here in Detroit, so I'm sure.
Yeah, I've been giving him some good stuff, dude. Yeah. I only give him he's real selective stuff.
And the thing that pisses me off is he played dumb and was like, yeah, well, I can choose the tickets if you want to fly out. I'm like, dude, how you not gonna like invite me? You met VR when I had my accident in Vegas, and now you guys are like boys and shit, like the Greek mafia and Mexican mafia, and fucking the Polacks getting left back in Detroit. So
Come on, man, fly
hopefully it
out.
rains or something, or Kid Rock comes down with ammonia. So real quick, VR,
we're gonna have a blast, man. I can't wait, dude. This boys in the band, that's gonna be
get to
sick.
the discount shit. Let's talk. It's about Major League Baseball playoffs. But let's be honest, even the Major League Baseball playoffs is football's bitch. With what's going on in football right now, college and the NFL, San Francisco starting off 1-2. Is there anything so far in this early part of the season that to you has been unexpected? And is there anything in this early part of the season that you think a bettor should take and factor into the coming weeks when they're betting their football?
Yeah, here's what surprised me. Seattle started off 3-0. And not I'm surprised they started off 3-0. I'm surprised at the hype they're getting for starting off 3-0. This is a team that hasn't started off 3-0 in at least the last 5-6 years, okay?
Mm-hmm.
And all of a sudden they're being crowned the NFC champs. And if they get the playoffs at home field advantage, no one could beat them. Listen, there's a reason that the best team in football hasn't won the Super Bowl in a long time. There's a reason the team that's won the Super Bowl has been over, 12-1 the last 5 years, okay? Because we overhype these regular seasons. Not when I say we, I mean the betting market. And if you look at the Seattle team, okay, it's been the same way for a long time. And I know over the last 3 years, people will say, well, they have been able to win on the road. They're 8-6 ATS with a couple pushes. That's barely breaking even, okay? That's winning a unit. If you gotta go 3 years to win a unit, really. But anyway, so this team, it's been simple. You bet them at home, you fade them on the road, okay? So let's look at Seattle real quickly. Here's what they've done. They went to Carolina. They were losing the game at the half. Carolina fumbles it and gives them the game, hands it to them on a silver platter in Carolina. And they only win that game by 5 points. And then they beat San Fran. Well, how good is San Fran? I don't know. They've been outscored by 40 points in their 3 games so far this season. The Colts were a double-digit dog and beat them outright. First double-digit outright win for a dog in how many years? So San Fran isn't as good as the hype was, okay? And then they beat Jacksonville, who was, if I'm not mistaken, as high as a 20-point dog at one point. So to crown this team as the best team in the NFC, to me, is absolutely ridiculous, okay? That, to me, is surprising how the market's totally fallen in love with them so quickly. Well, another thing that is surprising is Miami. Miami's 3-0. And granted, they got lucky against Atlanta, and I had Miami last week, and if I had to make that bet again this week, I probably wouldn't because I watched that game and I know I got lucky. But look what they've done. They've won, except for Cleveland, they won at Indianapolis in a close game, which to me is extremely impressive. They won at Cleveland, and let's not forget they were about a field goal dog in that game. They weren't supposed to. So here's a team that has really outperformed the betting market, and nobody's talking about them. They will come Monday night when they're probably going to get shellackled by the New Orleans Saints.
Is that a real
but
word?
Still,
shellackled?
To me, that's a good story. And then Tennessee. Look at Tennessee. Here's a team that's only played one home game so far, and they're 2-1 straight up, and everybody was expecting them to be so bad. Now, the Denver putting up 127 points. To me, that it's great, it's impressive, but I'm not really getting that into all that hype. I'm really not, until I could see them really starting to play some defense. They gave up 27 to Baltimore. They gave up 23 to Giants. They gave up 21 to Oakland. So for me, a team like that is beatable. Another thing, I expected the Eagles. I thought it would take until midseason before they collapsed, but they're already collapsed. And it's simple. You can't expect NFL players to want to run 80, 85 plays on offense, because if you're running 85 plays on offense, but you're only holding the ball for 22 minutes, then your defense is having to play 38 minutes. And you could picture these defensive players going home, telling their wives, telling their girlfriends, telling the mistress, telling their boys, this guy's going to get us killed. Right. My career just got shortened by 3 years. It's not college where you have these kids for 2 years and you could work them to death and then they go on and make millions of dollars. These guys, man, they don't want to be out there and kill themselves playing defense for that long. So I thought it would take a little longer for this team to totally collapse, but it looks to me like, they're not a team I really want to be betting. It just, as sexy as that offense may be in theory and on paper, it just doesn't translate to the NFL. And the last point before you have any questions or whatever is this option read. Listen, it worked, okay? The Wildcat worked. And I'm not saying the option read's comparable or to the Wildcat and it's going to go that out of style that quickly, but here's what we're seeing is happening. It's not a surprise that Washington and RG3 are having an awful year. It's not that shouldn't surprise anybody. It shouldn't surprise anybody that Kaepernick looks like a second-string quarterback since week 1 when he lit up Green Bay. And here's why. Because these kids are young. And guess what? Now they're going up against defensive coordinators, experienced defensive coordinators, experienced defensive players who had about 8-9 months in the offseason to design defenses they've never seen before. So maybe last year these defenses hadn't never seen the read option, but now all of a sudden these 24, 25-year-old quarterbacks have to go up against defenses they've never seen before either. And so far it looks like, to me, advantage defense. And if you look at the only one, the read option having a little bit of success, and a lot of success actually, it's the kid in Seattle, Russell Wilson. And the reason for that is simple. He's throwing the football. If you look at week 1 in Carolina, he threw for 320 yards, had a 76% completion rate. Against Jacksonville, 66% completions, and he threw for 200 yards. He's not just getting it done with his feet. He's running when he needs to, but he's not just getting it done with his feet. In fact, he only has 54 rushing yards this year so far. He's only rushed 17 times.
Yeah, before we get to the discount, I have a quick question, and this is the last one. I'm going to, once again, my webinar, I can do what I want. So this just shows everyone you got to send your questions in early. Is when you talked about Seattle and the road and the home, I mean, clearly you're 100% right. This year they're 3-0 against the spread at home. Last year they were 72% against the spread at home. In 2011 they were 64% at home against the spread. Almost anything, I remember the run with the infamous home dog on Monday Night Football. You would have lost money, X amount of past years. Now if you do the whole thing together, it's 50-50. Almost anything with enough volume, because the NFL numbers are so solid, ends up being usually ballpark 50-50. At which point do you think that you just have to start going against Seattle at home? Because I can't be the only one. You can't be the only one that knows that Seattle's hitting between 60 and 70% the last 3 years, 100% this year. When the public's going to start hammering them at home, at what point is that line going to be so far-fetched that it's going to be now you're going to see value? Or you just kind of have to sit back.
I love that question. I love that question. And the perfect example of that is tonight's Thursday night football game. Here's why. Professional bettors and wise guys have been taking advantage of Thursday night unders for a couple years now. Now all of a sudden it's front page news. And every recreational bettor is looking at the under right away on Thursday night. And you're starting to see the line get shaded that way, meaning this San Fran-St. Louis line opened 44, probably should have opened 45, which is a very key number. And now it's got bet down to, 42.5? It was 42 in some places. That's a huge move from what it should really be. It could still stay under, but once a trend is known and it gets factored into the price, it's hard for it to be profitable anymore. We've seen New England Patriots, who people bet week in and week out blindly, cover the spread for the last 5 years. They've been able to outperform the market still, even with a premium attached. But there have been some times they haven't when they're double-digit favorites. If you bet against them when they're double-digit favorites, you've cashed 7 out of 10 tickets over the last 30 times. okay? So I agree with you. The market, once it adds a premium, a team has to be extraordinary to be able to overcome it, and New England's proven to be extraordinary. I don't think Seattle is. So far, they have been able to at home, and now we're going to see if that continues for another year or so, because it's caught on. A team like the Saints, where with Sean Payton as head coach, they've covered the last 10 times at home. 10-0 straight up, 10-0 ATS with Payton as the head coach. Now, they're extraordinary enough there to keep it going, to where even though the odds makers have to protect the bookmakers and add a premium, which they've obviously done this week, they could still cover. It still doesn't mean, you may not be getting the best of it, but maybe you are. Maybe the market hasn't even caught up enough. So I'm not ready to discount something just yet, just because I know there's a premium attached. I have to really be certain that this team isn't capable of overcoming that premium. And that's why with trends, you got to be cautious, because once a trend's known, it's kind of like injury. It's kind of like weather. It's kind of like suspension. There's no longer value there. Right now, again, what you're doing is you're paying 110 for a coin flip, because if a book's already adjusted for an injury or a suspension or weather, knowing that means nothing to you. What matters is when you could bet an under, and it's going to be 50-mile-an-hour winds before they adjust from a 43 down to a 37. You know what I mean? Once it's down to 37, it could be 80-mile-an-hour winds. The value is probably gone. But in some cases, did they adjust enough? So for me, it's take each one on an independent basis. And the only way you could know for sure is to value it yourself. And fortunately, like I say, I trust a lot of people's judgment. And if you want to be a professional sports bettor and you really don't have sources, then you have to be out here in Vegas, because it's like nowhere else on the planet. You could be at a coffee shop. You could be at a Starbucks. You could be going to a sports book, and you're going to pick up bits and pieces of information you don't in other cities. Now, if you're someone like Johnny, who he's in Detroit, and he talks to people all over, not just the country, offshore and everything, it's different. He doesn't have to be here, But for me, like I say, I value a lot of people's information. And what I do is I find out what they think something's worth. What do you think this player going down is worth? Like, what was Trent Richardson's trade value? What was his value over replacement player? Was it really worth 4 points? Most guys I talked to said absolutely not. The market overreacted. If Kaepernick goes out for San Fran, what is the replacement value? And for me, now we're getting into something else. But talking about what he said with the trends, I think that's what it comes down to. Factoring in, is this team still capable of overcoming that bias? Because rest assured, when a trend's really talked about and it's known, there's going to be a bias attached. It doesn't mean it still is enough. But you got to know going in, right now, you're not getting that 1.5 points of value you were before everyone knew. You understand?
100%. VR, it's been a pleasure. We got a minute left. I'm just going to give a little props to John Rodriguez. He just messaged on the thing. He says San Francisco is going to go over the total tonight with Vernon Davis playing. And he also likes San Francisco team total over 23. So I'll root for your over 23, but I bet the under earlier in the week. So I'm going to have to go against you. Hopefully you're wrong on that one. VR, as he said, stone cold nuts in the playoffs, stone cold nuts in the World Series, red hot, even with the losing couple days in baseball, he's been stone cold killing it. I'm going to give you two options.
I say when I lose and I say when I win, man.
Exactly. No bullshit from VR, for sure. I'm going to give you two options, and to be honest, both are going to be valid. I could lie and say you got to pick either one, and you could take that, or you could use both. I'm going to say you could use both. You could use VR MLB. That's going to take 20% off his MLB playoff package, and that's going to be good through the next 24 hours only. VR MLB. And then VR.
If you like money, use it. If you're a fan of cash, use it.
Exactly. And it's a no-brainer. Like he said, it's already discounted heavily. So, I mean, I'm taking money out of VR's pocket, but I have to have a way to make these webinars.
Everybody's got to eat.
Everyone's got to eat. And then the other one's going to be good is come Saturday. VR is, I believe, I talked to him earlier. He's finalizing some.
My first 3-star max in college football this year. There's 14-4, baby. 14-4.
What other site, when you got a dude who's on a 14-4 run, is going to say, you know what, take $10 off? I'm going to take $10 off the Saturday package. So once it's up and loaded, VR 10 is going to work for you on Saturday. So that's going to do it. He's Vegas Runner. I'm Johnny Detroit. I appreciate everyone who attended. And listen, make sure you take advantage of those coupons. That's going to do it. These archives, this is going to be uploaded shortly. And that's it. Johnny Detroit, Vegas Runner. And
thanks for joining us, guys, girls, all you that joined us. Thank you. I really appreciate it. And like I said, we got to do more of these, man. Hey, it's great. I love when they send in questions.
We'll do another one in 2 weeks. We'll recap some football. So take care, guys. VR, thank you. And don't get too crazy with my boy Armando. You take care, brother.